welcome everyone, and today we're going to talk about one of the most effective methods which is going to be used over the coming months. Now this is dobbing. For people that don't know what dobbing is, it's essentially a single bait suspended either just off bottom, say 6 to 10 inches, or mid-water, where you're going to catch those fish which aren't feeding, and they're going to be balled up in certain areas of the peg, and this allows you in your session or your matches to keep ticking over and catching them fish. Now there's some important aspects of this rig for such a simple and an effective method, and what I'm going to do in this video is talk you through every single bit of it. So I'm going to start from putting your float on, and as I'm talking through that, why I picked this certain float, why I put this certain shot on, and talk you through, and hopefully it'll put more fish in your net this winter. So let's get started with making this simple and effective rig. Firstly, you're going to need a few items to make this dobbing rig. Now it's nice and simple, so we've got me here in front of me, and I'm going to show you what you're going to need to set this rig up. So first of all, I'm going to need some line. Now I've got some 015 power line here. This is not too heavy and it's not too light, so it's nice and robust as well. You're not going to get damage on your line when you're putting your shots on and when you're playing the fishing in your net like that. So at least you know when you're fishing your rig's going to be nice and solid. Second thing is you're going to need some pole float silicone. I just like to use 0.05 on this. Now the important thing I'll show you when I'm making the rig is to make sure you don't have them too small. When you want that float set at the correct depth, you want it to stay in that position. You don't want to be sliding up and down because you've used too little float rubbers because of that. Then you're going to need some shot pliers to crimp your shot on. Now this is probably one of the most important aspects of the rig, is the float. There's a few key features which you're going to need to look at when picking the right float. Now if I was to use a carbon stem over a wire, if there was a slight wind or tow on, it's going to drag my float. This is going to cause the bread to move, and you don't really want that. You want it nice and static. So this is why I've picked a nice wire stem on this F1 pellet. Now it's a 4x10 version, and you may ask why I picked to use a 4x10. This just makes sure it's still nice and light, but still nice and positive as well with the wire stem, so your bread can fall a lot more natural, but you can see them bites. Don't get me wrong, if it's a windy day you might need to step it up to a 4x12, but most of the fishing in winter I'll use this for dobbing. Also, the bristle is really important. You're going to want a 1.5mm hollow tip. This is because you need the bread to register on it, you need to see all your bites, and the sun and the light conditions in the winter can be terrible, so you need to see them small indications and bites when you're fishing. So that is the perfect ideal dobbing float for me. Also, you're going to need some scissors when you're trimming up your knots and stuff to make it all neat and tidy. Loop tire to make that loop at the end so it's nice and all the same throughout your rig, your hook length, so it's not too uneven. Now this is probably one of the biggest questions in fishing that I get asked a lot, is shots or stots. Now with this bread fishing, you're searching areas, you're searching your peg, you're searching that. You need to make sure your bread falls to how the fish want it on the day. So if the fish want it nice and slow for you, you can spread your shot out. If they want it in a certain area and you want to bulk it down, you can do. Now with shot, don't get me wrong, you can use them for this, but I just like to use stots. You can move them about on your line a lot easier. They're still the same as shot, but you just make it nice and versatile. Moving it around, you can try different things in different situations. So that's why I look to use stots. I've got number 11s here. That float I know will take 5 number 11s, maybe a little trimmer shot of 12 or 13 just to dot it down, depends how the fishing is. If you need to see my bristle more or less, you just vice versa with the trimmer shot. But 5 number 11s is going to get your float shotted correctly. And last of all, going to need a winder to put the end product on. So we've got all the items now, we've talked through them. Now let's get started with making this rig. Right, so we've been through all the aspects of the rig now and why we use it and what they need them for. So what we're going to do is start with making the rig now. So I've got the trusty rig board here. So I'm going to put my line into position there. Just go around that pin so it doesn't move. It's nicely locked in now. I'm pulling that tight. I'm just going to give myself a little bit more. Pulling that tight. Now we're going to have to put the float onto the line. So all you do is take your float, pass it through the eye, Now, you can't really fish with it like that, so you need to have some float silicone down the bottom. So before, you see me take my float silicone. Now I'm going to quite big chunks of float silicone just so I can make sure that rig nice and stable when I set its position. So I've cut them there now. You can see them there, nice and big chunks. So what I'm going to do now is just thread them onto my line. What I like to do is get the first one on. Just thread the line on. Can't. My eyesight's going there. Thread your line on. Now you got your first one on. Now what I like to do, instead of having 3 on the line and juggling it around, just put the first one on. So it gives yourself a nice solid base to put your second one on. So just thread that first one on. Now, a lot of the time people ask where to put the float silicone on the float. Now I just like to put it, say about just below where the painted section is on the stem. It gives you about 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, just away from the body. This just eliminates, say, if any time the line catches on there and causes the line to cut into the body, if under solid pressure, if you're catching them big carp. So it just allows it to run freely off that. Just makes it a nice little ridge. Now, because you've got one solid on there, you can just slide the other one on, no problem. You haven't got float silicone dropping off everywhere, you're not going to lose it. Makes it nice and easy. Got that one on there. The final one, smooth the flow up slightly. Now with the last one, I just like to make it a little bit bigger. I did it the wrong way there, left-handed. Just make the last one a little bit bigger. This is because you're going to leave a bit over the end of the float. This just stops your line catching on the float. Say if you've got a little bit of sharpness on the wire, just stops it and protects your rig, like so there. So it's probably a tiny bit over the end, just protects your rig and makes it all nice and neat, and you can add your shot underneath it. So now you've got your float on your line, which is ideal situation. Now what you're going to do is you want to make a loop in the bottom of this line here. So all I do is take my line, just give me a bit more, just a bit of slack, and make a loop behind it. Add the loop tire into that loop you've just made behind the first one, spin it round, push the first loop into the gap, pull it tight. I'm going to pull that there, and there you go, you've got a loop at the end. Now what I like to do is trim the tag end off. Just make sure you put it in a pile. I've got a little bait tub there just so it's not everywhere, it's not in the way. If you're at home, the animals can't get it on the bank, ducks and stuff like that, you don't want animals to be eating that stuff. Just make sure it goes in the bin. And now you can see I'm going to spin the line so it releases some line, and what I'm going to do is go all the way down to this pin at the bottom here. I want it under some tension because when I put my shots on I want it to be nice and tight. So I've got it on there. As you can see now, the rig's on the board. I can move it wherever I want. I can get the shotting pattern I need, if I need a certain shotting pattern and stuff like that. But for me, I want to be using this bulk and 2 droppers one. So all I'm going to do is move that onto there. Just tighten my line up so we can get the right shotting pattern we need on the float. Now you heard before me speak about using stots, so that's what I'm going to use. This float I know takes 5 number 11s, so all we're going to do is attach them to the line. So all you want to do is drop them on your rig board. I've got 5 there now. And then using your pliers, make sure they're a flat edge so you don't damage the shot. And all you want to do, you don't have to go to the desired place for them yet, because they're shot, you're going to move them. Just get your thumb like that, there's an open end facing upwards, just literally give them a squeeze onto your line there, like so, and then you can move them to which area you want. So I'm going to put one on my hook length knot. We've got another one there. Then we're going to go 6 inches above that. Then we're going to go for a little bulk. Just slide that down. Little bulk, 6 inches above that. Now, the reason for this shotting pattern I like to start with, it's just a nice starting option. You want to catch a few fish, you want to see where the fish are at, and it still gives you a nice natural fall. Don't get me wrong, you can change it up, and that's why I've chosen to use stock. So I can just move that little bulk there, got the bulk there, dropper and a dropper. So the last 12 inches of that rig now, we've got some shot. Now, obviously, from a foot down, it's going to fall nice and slow. So that's ideal what you're looking for. But like a few different options is, say if a bit deeper, you can put all the shot under the float, so it cocks nice and quick, and you got a nice slow fall with 2 number 11s down the line. Don't get me wrong, this is not set in stone. This is not the perfect shotting pattern straight for the bread dobbing all the time. Sometimes you might just want move that up there, move that further up, and then move that all under your float, so you've got a bigger drop, nice slower fall. Some days you might be on a pile of fish and you might think, right, I want to just get my bait to where they are. Say they're sat at 3 foot, you just flick it in at 3 foot and you know you're in the right area. So just make sure you play around. That's why we chose to use stocks, because I can move them freely on there. I can just spread them out like shallow fishing, nice strung bulk, so it falls nice and slow. But remember, your float's going to cock straight away with the wire, so it's still nice and stable, so you can see them bites. So just mix it up with your shotting pattern. I've just done it basic there, just so you can put it on your winders so you know everything's shotted correctly. But there's a nice little way of doing it. Now all we're going to do is take that line off, take that off there, and all I like to do is, say if you're going to fish, say you're going to be fishing 3 foot, 4 foot maximum this dobbing, so you want to be looking at like 6 foot to start off with. So all I do is just take your arms length apart and add a little bit more just for your tying your loop at the end. So all you want to do is that loop again. All I'm going to do is just a little through overhand loop, just with my hands this time, just because I'm probably going to trim that down anyway. Now, this is one thing that people often overlook, is where to put the rig on. If you put your rig on there, you're going to cause a little loop in your line. Now this will cause your hook length to kick off and it won't look straight. This is why on the winder, that little notch there is for your hook length. So what you want to do, slide that on there, wind it round, make sure you keep to the side. I like to get 2 floats on a wind, so just keep everything to the left on this one. Keep winding it round, and then we've got to the end now. Pull that onto your black thing. Ooh. And there's your dobbing rig ready to go, ready to catch them big F1s, big carp in the winter months. Now I hope you found this video nice and easy, simple to follow. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss any future videos. Also hit the like button, comment below if you've got any questions, and I'll see you on the bank soon. Cheers.